Good evening, everyone. I'm Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle. Thank you, as always, for spending time with us. The crisis that they created. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Another day, another predictable stretch of Democrat fear-mongering. Now, in the absence of a positive agenda of their own, they're trying to scare Americans and legal immigrants into thinking that if they get, stopped for speeding or maybe have too many unpaid parking tickets, you could risk ending up in a Salvadoran Supermax prison.
It is a government-funded kidnapping, plain and simple. Gilmar, a father of 3, lived in Maryland for over half his adult life. He had legal permission to stay in the United States. No one is safe in Trump's America.
No one is safe. And the Academy Award goes to Congresswoman Dexter. Now, first off, Albrego Garcia was an illegal alien who 2 courts had determined was a gangbanger. His case had been reviewed by 2 judges who rejected his arguments. Now, he and everyone else who was here illegally should have never been allowed in and should have been deported years ago. And as for the line that no one is safe in Trump's America, well, that's partially true, but not the way the Congresswoman intends it. If people are unsafe, it's not because of President Trump. It's because of the open border nightmare that the D.C. Uniparty inflicted on our beautiful country. Now, we shouldn't even have to be talking about how we're going to deport Biden's 11 million illegals. We shouldn't have to be talking about how ICE can track down the thousands of illegal felons here and then remove them from our communities. Or how to find the 300,000 missing children who cross the border. Or how to get nonviolent illegals to self-deport using that app. And we shouldn't have to explain to parents why their kids' schools are overcrowded. We shouldn't have to tell small business owners that, look, you might have to face organized theft rings of illegals. Look at the smiles on those TDA members. Our city shouldn't be reeling with serious illegal alien criminals hiding in plain sight. Just a few days ago, we learned that of the 206 illegals arrested between April 6th and April 12th in New York, ICE says more than half had significant criminal convictions or are currently facing charges for crimes like murder, assault, arson, rape, drugs, and illegal firearms. That's all. One is a foreign fugitive wanted for crimes in his home country, and one has a homicide conviction in the Philippines. This is the nightmarish world that not just Biden, but the entire globalist old guard created. One where, during Biden's term in office, GOP members of Congress would express impassioned outrage over the border crush, but they wouldn't do anything else. Spending bills kept getting greenlit. All the while, the migrant numbers kept skyrocketing. And, of course, zero empathy from Democrats for the Americans who never voted for this, but were forced to deal with this crisis.
You so strong about protecting those aliens, but you won't do nothing for the U.S. citizens. We are the ones who pay your salaries. Let's start with cutting off illegals, getting free everything. That'll save us a lot of money, what, $600 million?
And now, for purely political reasons, Democrats are caterwauling about the plight of Mr. Albrego Garcia. We need a new word for phony when it comes to the MS-13 defenders.
I would say they were illegally abducted by U.S. government agents and then taken to foreign prisons against the law. And the reason why it's important to treat each of these cases individually under the law is because our Constitution requires due process before people can be deprived of their liberty.
Yeah, that's nice. Nice, Chris. But what process would really suffice for Senator Van Hollen? The answer is no process is enough for them. Because if it were up to Chris Van Hollen, all the illegals would not only have a right to stay here, but they'd have a right to vote, run for office, and collect every benefit under the sun. The sad truth is Van Hollen and the quartet of other Democrat copycats who mimicked his El Salvador trip today care not one whit about constitutional norms or the rule of law. For if they did, they would not have sat by and allowed our country to be flooded with illegals in the first place. Congressman Jason Smith recently traveled to El Salvador and had the chance to speak with a few of the deported MS-13 illegals whose deportation left-wing legal groups object to.
While we were there, there was 2 different MS-13 gang members that we spoke to within their cells. One was originally deported from Highland Park, California, who told us that he had killed 6 people while in the United States. And then there was another one deported from Northern Virginia. These are terrorists according to Donald Trump's designation, and they're in the right place right now in El Salvador.
How this plays out legally, it's anyone's guess. While politically Trump's on solid ground, things may get stickier, as we've already seen, in court because the DOJ's own lawyer originally conceded that Abrego Garcia had been sent to this supermax prison erroneously. Well, of course, that triggered the judges who already loathed Trump and some constitutionalists on the conservative side as well. And over the weekend, another setback for Trump at the Supreme Court when a 7-2 majority ruled in the wee hours of the morning that further deportations of Tren de Aragua gang members should be temporarily halted. Justices Thomas and Alito, as usual, were correct in dissent, with Alito writing, "In the middle of the night, the court issued unprecedented and legally questionable relief without giving the lower courts a chance to rule, without hearing from the opposing party, within 8 hours of receiving the application with dubious factual support for its order. Both the executive and the judiciary have an obligation to follow the law." And late today, President Trump on Truth Social expressed his frustration, noting that, "I'm doing what I was elected to do, remove criminals from our country. But the courts don't seem to want me to do that. We cannot give everyone a trial because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 200 years. We'd need hundreds of thousands of trials for the hundreds of thousands of illegals we're sending out of the country. Such a thing is not possible to do. What a ridiculous situation we're in." Oh, he's right about that. The crisis that they created, not Trump. The bottom line. Democrats are open borders radicals. But now they think they've turned the table on Trump on the question of lawlessness. And they're itching for Trump and his team to be found in contempt because it would then help their narrative that he thinks he's above the law. And if Democrats win the House in 2026, they will cite this case as grounds for his impeachment. But Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, John Sauer, the Solicitor General, they're both very talented lawyers. So this one migrant's case, poorly handled by a lower-level staffer, I think they know it shouldn't end up being a defining moment for Trump's immigration priorities. They, the Democrats, created this crisis, and that's the angle.
Lamb chops, egg hunts, and church. My Easter was about the same, but at the White House, it was a little different.
Do you remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember? Do you remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden.
The Easter bunny wasn't body checking the president away from the press. Kids weren't being sniffed, and there were real eggs. 30,000 of them were scattered on the South Lawn. Egg prices are down. It's what Jesus would have wanted. And President Trump was moved by the Holy Spirit to say this on Sunday, quote, "Happy Easter to all, including the radical left lunatics who are fighting and scheming so hard to bring murderers, drug lords, dangerous prisoners, and the mentally insane and well-known MS-13 gang members and wife beaters back into the country." Democrats spent all weekend hunting for the wrong eggs. They're looking for one bad huevo in El Salvador, and more Democrats hopped on the caravan caucus and headed south
After a long day, we have arrived in El Salvador. I am here with several of my colleagues to demand that Donald Trump release Kilmar Abrego Garcia, union member, Maryland man who was wrongfully detained and deported.
We are here to release Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
We're also here to make a statement that this cannot be allowed and isn't allowed in our country.
This is a massive due process crisis in our country.
So instead of spending Easter Sunday with their families, Democrats went on an egg hunt in El Salvador to undeport an illegal alien gang member accused of beating his wife. They could have spent Easter Sunday anywhere, but they wanted to spend it with MS-13.
You are there for an El Salvadorian man who was a resident illegally of Maryland. You're a congressman from Florida. Why are you in El Salvador?
Well, we're here because a man who had protected status in Maryland, a Maryland man, union member, worker with a citizen wife and beautiful children, was taken out of his state and out of the United States back over here without due process.
Just your run-of-the-mill union member who traffics humans from Texas to Maryland for a construction job, allegedly. Kilmar Garcia is like Zelensky. Politicians are flying in from all over the world to get a photo op. Garcia's defense attorneys bought him a non-threatening short-sleeve button-down that screams Maryland dad at a summer barbecue. Sources say Van Hollen insisted on soup. He didn't want Garcia holding a knife or fork. Van Hollen also insisted he didn't order the margaritas. He got duped by El Presidente of El Salvador. Democrats loved the attention Van Hollen got, and they were convinced Kilmar was safe enough to have Easter dinner with. Problem was, Garcia had plans.
Is there any chance you'll be meeting with Abrego Garcia while you're there?
We got word at the embassy that our request has been denied by the government here locally. They say it's because we're not here on an official capacity, but we're not giving up. We're going to continue. We're building off of the trip of Senator Van Hollen, and we're not the first members here, and we're not going to be the last.
Democrats are like, you guys broke into our country. We should be able to break into yours. But they didn't have the right paperwork. It's funny how that works in other countries. So this isn't an official delegation. It's basically a few politicians on vacation. Van Hollen made it back from his margarita date with Kilmar just in time for Easter, and we got stuck with the bill.
Who did pay for this trip?
This was an officially cleared, congressional trip, cleared on a bipartisan basis. Yes, like every other trip.
So instead of seeing his family, Van Hollen spent the weekend doing Sunday shows, bragging about his conjugal visit with MS-13. Honey, it's Easter Sunday. The kids really want to spend some time with you, and you've been gone all week. Do you have to spend Easter on TV? Republicans are calling Van Hollen the new senator from El Salvador. And the esteemed senator from El Salvador is proud of it. Gavin Newsom, who knows a thing or two about photo ops, says enough already.
Governor Gavin Newsom of California calling Mr. Abrego Garcia's case, quote, the distraction of the day. He argues Democrats are playing right into the hands of President Trump, an issue he wants to be focused on. How do you respond to Governor Newsom?
I think Americans are tired of elected officials or politicians who are all finger to the wind, what's blowing this way, what's blowing that way. And anybody who can't stand up for the Constitution and the right of due process doesn't deserve to lead.
When did Kilmar Garcia change his name to Due Process? Was it right around the time Democrats discovered he was MS-13? Last week, they were defending a Maryland man.
The Trump administration abducted and imprisoned a Maryland man.
Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland man.
A Maryland man.
Maryland man.
The growing calls to return the Maryland man.
That Maryland man.
The Maryland man.
The wrongful deportation of a Maryland man to El Salvador.
He is, of course, the Maryland man now held in El Salvador.
What happened to the Maryland man? Well, he became MS-13 who gave his wife black eyes, allegedly. That's when Democrats stopped defending MS-13. Now they're defending due process for MS-13. The party that brought us cancel culture, the Me Too movement, and the Trump trials definitely cares about due process. Democrats have decided they want to be defense attorneys for MS-13. Americans hate MS-13. How do you think we feel about their defense attorneys? So what did Van Hollen talk to his client about when they were sharing margs?
Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject.
Since you were the one person to have met with him, and since this is a thing, you say on social media, it's what we hear from Donald Trump and Republicans every day, all day long, you didn't ask him?
I didn't ask him that because I know what his answer is. What he told me was he was sad, traumatized that he was being in prison because he has committed no crimes.
Van Hollen spent a half hour with Kilmar and never asked, you know those tattoos on your knuckles? Please tell me those aren't MS-13, right? How many Maryland dads do you know have a marijuana leaf, a smiley face, a cross, and a skull tatted on their fingers?
Experts that I spoke to, people that I trust, people that are former gang prosecutors and investigators tell me that those tattoos most likely represent the letters MS and the numbers 1, 3. You take the first letter of the Spanish word representing each, and that's MS, and then you've got a cross commonly representing 1, and the last one is a C in Spanish, and it's the third letter in the alphabet, so that represents the number 3. That is my understanding.
So we asked Garcia's attorney, what's going on with the tats? Why has his wife been covering them all up with emojis and photos? Well, they just got back to us. No idea. Now, Holman says you don't get that kind of tattoo unless you're a bad hombre.
Tattoos are one of many factors that's going to determine someone's gang. It's not the only one. You can't ignore a tattoo. That's one more factor that leads you to believe maybe he's a gang member. It's just not based on tattoos. It's based on a lot of other things, but tattoos one of many. But no one's removed just because of a tattoo.
MSNBC doesn't want you to know that they're defending a guy from MS-13. If you say that on their air, they'll cut you off.
In 2019, Garcia was issued a deportation order. 2 separate judges affirmed Garcia was a member of MS-13, which is a gang that may be even worse.
We've been watching President Donald Trump there swearing in the new administrator of the CMS, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, Dr. Mehmet Oz.
The media is hiding the truth. And Garcia's lawyer says the truth is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if he slugs his wife, traffics humans, and is a member of a bloodthirsty gang.
They try and find dirty laundry in our client, which really is irrelevant. First of all, their evidence is extraordinarily thin. But even if there was something there, that's really irrelevant.
Democrats say if you don't look at all the evidence, this violent gangster is just a Maryland dad. It's like when they said, if you don't look at all the evidence that the virus came from a lab, it came from a wet market. If you don't look at all the evidence that Biden's senile, then Biden's in great shape. Tampon's daughter says he's not MS-13. Kilmore's more like Jesus.
If Jesus were alive today and in the United States, this administration would have already taken him and removed him from this country without due process. Claimed he was a member of the MS-13 gang as a way to try to justify not giving him due process.
MS-13's being unjustly crucified like Jesus? Kilmore Garcia's dying for the sins of 20 million bad hombres? This isn't about due process. It's about overdue process. You don't skip the process of legally coming here and then demand a process when we kick you out. You can't cut in line to come here and then wait in line to leave. Doesn't work like that. The Democrats are arguing that every illegal alien gang member should get a lawyer and years of hearings and appeals. I'll be retired by the time these guys get deported. And don't worry, I don't plan on retiring soon. The only people who want to slow walk deportations are lawyers, illegals, and Van Hollens. The rest of the country wants them gone, and they don't care where they go. Democrats let foreign gangs invade America, and now they're whining that Trump's deporting them too fast. And the media says anyone who supports deporting illegals is a Nazi.
What did Hitler do? What did Hitler do in the Holocaust? He took people from Germany to other countries.
Yeah.
Where there was no German law. There was not even a pretense of German law. They took them to Poland or, Hungary or whatever, and they killed them.
And so when you see what's happening right now with this El Salvadoran gulag, I mean, this CCOT gulag, He's basically taking a page out of that playbook, you think?
First of all, Matthews looks shipwrecked. And if deporting illegals makes you Hitler, then Barack Obama should have a little mustache. He deported over 3 million illegals, and Matthews got a thrill up his leg. Now, the media says if Trump can deport Latin American gangsters, your daughter is going to get kidnapped from chemistry class.
If they could do it to them, if they could snatch students off the street without any pushback or recourse, they will do it to any of us. And to be very clear, it's going to be the people of color and vulnerable communities that are next in line.
Trump campaigned on deporting Biden migrants. He won, so he's doing it. Biden never campaigned on opening the borders. He did it and lost. That's democracy. But Jamie Raskin doesn't like that and says if foreign leaders work with a president who wins in a landslide, Democrats are going to punish them.
If and when we come back to power, and we will, we are not going to look kindly upon people who facilitated, to use a word of the day, who facilitated authoritarianism in our country.
Democrats say Trump's a dictator, and now they're saying just wait until they get back in power? I'm confused. They can't even get their hoaxes straight. Everyone in Maryland says El Salvador can keep this guy.
And welcome to Hannity. And this Monday night, we have a lot of ground to cover, including a special Hannity investigation tonight into far-left elite universities. They believe they are above the law, entitled to tens of millions of your hard-earned tax dollars in spite of multi-billion-dollar endowments. Oh, and now Harvard is suing our country, demanding even more of your money. We've got the details. We'll also introduce you to the Democratic Party's weird new plan to see more relatable. The New York Times, they are defining this as dark woke. We'll explain. And Congresswoman Nancy Mace filmed a very tense encounter with a man at a makeup store. Here's a preview.
You're absolutely crazy.
I'm absolutely
you are. And get out of my face.
You're insane.
Goodbye.
You're insane. You're gonna me and you're
Yep.
gonna be voted
Bye.
out so fast this year. I
I'm
can't
not.
wait for you to
Not. I won by so much.
You're a disgrace to this state. That's what you are. You're a disgrace. I asked you a simple question and you just to go on this tirade and tell me you.
Yeah, you.
Disgusting.
Get out of my face.
You. How about
Get out of my
that?
face.
You're nasty.
Try it. What's your name? What's your name? What's your name? Yep, I sure did.
Okay, and coming up, Congresswoman Mace will join us. She'll give us her details. And in other news of the day segment, we're going to give you we'll give a huge thank you to President Trump, who saved all of you from another year of a very confused and confounded Joe Biden being led around the White House lawn by the Easter Bunny. Now it appears even the DNC is trying to purge Joe Biden's very strange Easter celebrations from their social media feeds. Only Jimmy Fallon will be able to explain that. And buckle up for our video of the day, wild brawl at a golf course. This is not a hockey rink. That did not end well for that shirtless guy. Didn't end well. But we begin tonight, this Monday night, with bad news for the Democratic Party. Just when you think they can't get any worse, well, just when you think that they've hit their bottom, they just keep digging. According to a brand new Gallup poll, confidence in Democratic leadership just hit an all-time low. It has literally never been lower, ever. Only 25% of respondents approve of the Democratic leaders in Congress. That is a whopping 9 points lower than the previous record low. And get this, voters under 30, they are overwhelmingly shifting toward Republicans. According to a Yale Youth poll, voters aged 18 to 21 now favor the GOP by double digits. This has been a remarkable and reliable voting bloc for Democrats for decades now. But Congressman Jim Clyburn, he's now blaming the far-left legacy media mob for not being helpful and supportive enough. Really? It's like state-run media. Take a look.
Well, I think the message that comes from the Democratic Party is a good message. The problem we've got, Alice, is that we have to depend upon the media to deliver it. If we have the Washington Post, for instance, caving to this wannabe dictator, and we've got other media entities that seem to rather push a narrative that will bring eyes to their newspapers or to their television sets and not really give a fair hearing or reporting to what we're doing.
Let's get this straight. If only the abusively biased, Trump-hating journalists in the state-run legacy media mob were just a little more liberal, all the Democrats' popularity woes, they would be solved instantaneously. And as you can see, the left is totally out of touch. Just look at Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, who, couldn't be bothered to talk about his own constituents, Patty Morin, on the phone after her daughter, Rachel Morin, was brutally killed and raped by an illegal immigrant on that Maryland hiking trail, or the family of another Maryland constituent, Kayla Hamilton, same fate for her. But Chris Van Hollen had all the time in the world for his trip to El Salvador, that you paid for, by the way, to meet lovingly with a deported illegal immigrant who was identified as a possible gang member by two separate judges, accused of human trafficking by police, was a serial wife beater, according to his own wife in her own handwriting to police. But in order to score some kind of political point against Donald Trump, Van Hollen was more than willing to look past all of these glaring red flags. In fact, the senator didn't even bother to ask this guy whether, his new friend was a member of MS-13. Take a look.
Can you say with absolute certainty that he is not, nor has he ever been a member of the MS-13 gang? And did you ask him point blank?
Well, Dana, what Donald Trump is trying to do here is change the subject. The subject at hand is that he and his administration are defying a court order to give Abrego Garcia his due process rights.
But since you were the one person to have met with him, and since this is a thing, you say on social media, it's what we hear from Donald Trump and Republicans every day, all day long, you didn't ask him?
I didn't ask him that because I know what his answer is. What he told me was he was sad, traumatized that he was being in prison because he has committed no crimes.
Oh, okay. Entering the country illegally is not a crime anymore, thanks to Chris Van Hollen. He obviously doesn't care if he's a violent gang member. He just wants him back in the U.S. Maybe he'll let him move into his house. In fact, most Democrats seem to want the same thing. Even Tim Walz's daughter compared this illegal immigrant, if you can believe it, the day after Easter, we're reporting on this, to Jesus. Now today, 4 more Democratic lawmakers, they have now traveled themselves to El Salvador in a desperate attempt to meet with their new hero. Take a look.
More importantly, we're here to raise awareness that Kilmar needs to come home. We need to build support here in El Salvador, but also in the United States. He must come home.
This is not just a threat to all people in the United States who could be illegally abducted, detained, and transported internationally against their will.
We have to draw the line here. We have to make a big deal about this. Members of Congress have to come here and use the privilege we have to advocate at the highest levels to make sure that Kilmar is brought home.
Why didn't they raise awareness when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had wide open borders, known terrorists, known murderers, rapists, gang members, cartel members, 10 to 14 to million illegals entering our country? Why didn't they raise awareness and call that out at the time? They are lawmakers. Why didn't they insist that we have a rule of law in this country? This is insane. Remember, not long ago, this was the Democratic Party's stance on illegal immigration. Oh, how they have changed so quickly. Take a look.
I think we got to have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked. They're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes. And you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
Never thought I'd say it. Hillary sounds a lot like Donald Trump. Now, here we are in 2025. Democrats are trying to bring back an alleged gang member, human trafficker, who's been deported in our country illegally. It's almost hard to believe just how psychotic, radicalized this Democratic Party has become. Now, the DNC Vice Chair David Hogg is now plotting a new civil war within the Democratic ranks in order to purge less extreme candidates and Democrats from deep blue congressional districts. Now, with each passing day, the Democratic Party is only getting more and more radical, more and more extreme.
Ahead of WrestleMania this past weekend, Politico ran an article comparing the world of wrestling to Trump, saying that he lives and dies by kayfabe, where friend and foe alike never seem to know what's real and what's all for show. Now, kayfabe is a term in pro wrestling, the unwritten rule that both the athletes and fans understand it's a combination of sport and storytelling. It's the suspension of reality you need when someone tells you Taylor Swift is hot. Of course, this isn't to say pro wrestling's fake. They train to fight, and on top of that, they're trained in skills most fighters never know. Yeah, they could kill you, but they can also thrill you. I know right now you're thinking, man, Greg sure knows wrestling. Well, that's because I wrestled in high school. My signature move was the reverse cowgirl. What? That is a wrestling move.
Yeah, absolutely.
My coach taught me. Now, Politico claims Trump might just be America's greatest kayfaber. Part politician, part entertainer, a guy who knows how to play his audience. And his fans, well, they're in on it too. They cheer and they boo. And true, like any pro wrestler, Trump knows how to cut a good trash-talking promo, even during Easter. Seriously, do you remember the bunny with Joe Biden?
Do you remember the bunny with Joe Biden? Remember? Do you remember when the bunny took Joe Biden out? He's not taking Trump out. Anyway, that was a beautiful moment when the bunny saved Joe Biden.
That was a beautiful moment. Meanwhile, the media is so clueless, they scream every time Trump says he's thinking of annexing Rosie O'Donnell. But Politico is wrong. Trump has substance behind the show, or it wouldn't resonate at all. Now, what are the media? Total kayfabe junkies. But it's not meant to entertain, but to inflame, fabricating outrages to incite action. So the more unhinged among them hatch assassination plots and toss Molotovs at Teslas, while their leaders jet to El Salvador for cozy lunch dates with wife-beating gangsters. What Trump's kayfabe game has really done is expose them, showing us who his opponents really are. He's playing them like a Chinese spy telling Eric Swalwell he's hot. But we always knew they were fakes. They act like Trump is Hitler, then beg for interviews when he wins. Remember when Morning Joe said Trump was a danger to democracy? Then he and Mika bent the knee in Mar-a-Lago? I'd call it ballsy if Scarborough hadn't had his snipped years ago. Obama called Trump a national threat, then looked downright chummy with him at Carter's funeral. And Kamala, she called Biden a racist to his face, then laughed it off later with, come on, it's a debate. The woman was about as authentic as a Cory Booker girlfriend. He likes to play the field, come on. You want more kayfabe? There was the contrived fantasy that Biden was sentient, or that Kamala was competent. And who could forget the astronauts from last week pretending their 11-minute ride was an achievement for women when they were simply pimping space travel for rich people? Of course, there's trans men cosplaying as women who demanded us to play along. But unlike a great wrestler, dudes pretending to be chicks can't convince us their identity is real, especially when you catch them texting at the urinal. But in politics, kayfabe has casualties. In Minnesota, one of Tim Walz's state employees was arrested for vandalizing Teslas. These fools, they're like 6-year-olds watching SpongeBob SquarePants and thinking it's real. Don't they know those cars have more hidden cameras than my guest bedroom? Yet when they're arrested, they act like a dog who was just shown a card trick. What happened? But it's not theater anymore. Dems and media prime the mob by pretending Trump is Hitler, then run and hide when their grunts follow through. Suddenly, kayfabe becomes domestic terrorism. So this isn't on Trump. It's on the people who demonized him while knowing it was all theater. And now the political kayfabe is bleeding into the crowd. And this time, nobody's yelling fake news. Let's welcome tonight's guest. In his previous life, he was a beige Toyota Camry. Fox News contributor Tom Shalhoub. Easter may be over, but you can still enjoy this ham. Fox News contributor Mary Catherine Ham. In the ring, he was Kane, but as mayor, he's Abel. Former pro wrestler and mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee, Glenn Jacobs. And he's strong as an ox and thinks outside the box. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NWA world champion, Tyrus. I want to go to someone first who's familiar with this topic of kayfabe. So, Tom, good to see you. By the way, tonight you look like the guy in my neighborhood who had 2 paper routes and did it by car.
My daughter, I was wearing this today. My daughter said I look like a 1980s bully.
Yes, you do.
I thought, that's what I wanted to be in the 80s.
You look like a bully with AIDS. I don't care.
That's the meanest kind, Greg.
Yes, it's the meanest. So tell me, what do you think of the analogy, the wrestling analogy that Politico uses? I think it doesn't quite work with Trump.
It's so interesting because, well, did everyone know this kayfabe? I never heard of this till today. I don't know if it was something that most people are aware of, but I think it's interesting. In the article, they make the case for it because they talk about how it came about. The amazing thing is that these wrestlers, they create their own narratives, and that is what Trump does. And so this idea is, if Trump knows it now, in Trump 2.0, he's even more kayfabe than he was before, because look what's happening this week. Who are the villains? International, gang terrorists, right? And we're now having the discussion. What was it last time when he was trying to deport people? It was, the families at the border, family separation. And the media was able to create the narrative. Trump is out in front of this. And now, what are we discussing? Did the guy beat his wife or didn't he? It's down to basically like, how guilty is this guy? Yeah. And even Democrats they're trying to defend him. So Trump, he has people, Democrats now, they're defending a terrorist, right? Mm-hmm. A gang criminal. They're defending what else this week? Harvard.
Yes.
Harvard's like the only thing less popular than a terrorist. You can go to like the Harvard clubs on 44th Street, go there. They don't even like Harvard there.
Yeah, that's true.
So the narrative has totally switched, and now Democrats don't know what to do. They're defending villains at this point.
Yeah, Glenn, you've been in wrestling and politics. Do you find this to be a fair comparison? You are like the expert.
So if you are unfamiliar with the term kayfabe, I'll give you an example. Think Joe Biden shaking hands with thin air, mm-hmm. or being escorted around by the Easter Bunny, mm-hmm. and then the media is saying, oh, he's sharp as a tack, never been better. That's exactly what we're talking about here. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump is a larger-than-life personality that served him well ever since he was a real estate mogul, then on TV, then as president of the United States. It's a persona that he uses to gain an advantage. But the reason that it works is because it's who he is.
Yeah.
If you want to look at the fakers, it ain't Donald Trump. It's the people on the other side of the aisle. And that's why they're just not successful, because they're trying to be something that they're not.
Yeah, it's authenticity. Mary, Catherine, Ham.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm good.
Very stripy today.
Thank you.
What do you make of this analogy, this wrestling analogy?
I think it's pretty decent. I love the idea of somebody in the Politico newsroom being like, I've heard of a thing called wrestling.
Yes.
And the whole newsroom's like, who let a state school kid in?
Yeah.
Like, how did we get one of these? But they're uncovering something that I think many commentators have noticed for like a decade, which is that this man is the ultimate showman, and that's part of how he creates narratives. That's part of how he convinces people. And the authenticity is actually part of it, is that his id is showman. And that is what works for him.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tyrus. I leave it to you.
Well, first of all, I'd like to point out one thing.
Yes.
That we all need to pay a little respect to. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of talk of the Easter Bunny. And no, and I for one and I remember I had a problem with the fact that Joe Biden had a white Easter bunny, mm-hmm. And I noticed that President Trump had an Easter bunny of color, and there's yet no praise. Why are we not celebrating? True. And I'm pretty sure that wasn't a DEI brother rabbit. That brother was at the top of his rabbit game. And
you're the only person that's pointed this out.
Well, because I'm also the only person in this room of color.
Yes.
So it's about time we start giving a little credit where credit's due. He had a black rabbit on Christmas Day, light skin. It was maybe even a Irish rabbit at this point. And I think we need to recognize that, because that's part of the kayfabe, is that he's Hitler.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to bet that Hitler would not, on any given day, had a brown rabbit next to him cracking jokes with him. I'm willing to bet the farm on that one. Now let's be serious for a moment. Yeah, but that's what they are is, and they didn't quite understand what kayfabe means. Kayfabe is like you don't expose the secrets.
Right.
You don't give away the plan. And if you do, you blow the spot. Or the worst thing you can hear when you came back from an agent was this wonderful classic phrase, "You the bed." And that's exactly, he's laughing because it's the last thing as a wrestler you want to hear. Yeah. You get Arn Anderson going, "Hey kid, you just the bed. If I was you, don't even change, just get out." I've had a few of those in my career. And that's what the media has done. They have proverbially the bed. They take everything he says literally. They are the worst kind of wrestling fans. They're the ones that their favorite guy loses and they send him letters like, "How could you lose? You're not training hard enough. Tyrus, you are bigger than him. You outweigh him by 100 pounds. And the little Mexican guy, Mysterio, beat you. I hate you. You're a loser." You've heard it. And you're sitting there going, "I don't write bro."
This is like the people who believe, like the little ladies who believe that soap operas are actually happening and they write letters to the characters.
Yes, this is like the 40-year-old that's still setting traps for Santa Claus.
So I'm to believe neither of those things is true.
Yeah. Yes.
Is this what you're telling me?
I hate to break it.
I'm just learning this.
My kids go to bed at 9, the ones that I get to watch. So I won't be giving away any secrets.
All right, before we go, come see me on tour. I'll be in Knoxville, Tennessee, Highland Heights, Kentucky, Jacksonville, Florida with Tom Shalhoub, our wonderful little paper boy. Go to ggutfeld.com for tickets. They're running out. I think they're running out. I just like to say that. Up next, COVID.gov gets a makeover.
If you'll be in the New York area and would like tickets to see Gutfeld, go to foxnews.com/Gutfeld and click on the link to join our studio audience.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.